Hi, Mike.
Hi, Lee.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, good. We're currently recording, so
Okay.
little snafu tonight, but that's okay.
Getting ready for the holidays?
Yes, yes. They're
Good.
approaching quickly.
They sure are.
Are you?
Yeah, I guess I have to say I am, but I'm kind of buried in a new job, new client that I have. So got so much going on. It's getting up early, going to sleep late,
I hear you. I hear you. Could be worse, right?
Could be a lot worse. So no complaints.
Good for you.
Luckily, we're not traveling.
I know, right?
Hi, Adria.
Hi, Mike. Oh, I'm really dark.
There you
Oh,
go.
that's better.
That's
Oh,
bright.
there we go. How are you?
Doing okay. How you doing?
Doing well. Busy, busy.
Yeah, we were just talking about that.
Yeah, it's a nutty time of year. And you would think that work would be a little slower this time of year. Not so much.
Yeah, I guess, well, I'm in sales and business development. So at the end of the year, a lot of times, all the lawyers are very busy trying to get these, contracts signed before year end.
Yes, I can imagine.
All the hard negotiating probably starts around then too, right?
Right, yeah. Yep,
So,
definitely. So yeah, but can't complain. All is well. Busy is good.
sure is.
Do you have plans for the holiday? Are you staying local or?
Staying local, but, yeah, my kids will come up and, visit us. And one son and his family live here in Gloucester, so that's easy. And then,
Yep.
yeah, the other will come up from Boston, so gonna
Oh,
keep it
nice.
pretty small.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
How about you? Are you gonna be sticking around here? Cape Cod?
We are actually leaving, so kind of crazy. I was in Vegas from Friday to yesterday, and I'm at work for like a day and a half, and we leave tomorrow afternoon to go to Florida to spend Christmas with my husband's in-laws.
Oh,
Or
wow.
excuse me, my in-laws, my husband's parents.
What were you doing in Vegas? Was it vacation or work?
Technically it was vacation. It was really my husband's vacation. I just got guilted into joining, and we went to the Patriots game though, so that was fun, even though that was an unreal end to the game. Did you happen to see that game?
I didn't, but I wasn't feeling too good this weekend, but
Oh my
yeah,
goodness, it was nuts.
that's awesome. Good. So
Yeah. So it was good. So it was a forced vacation, which I ended up having fun on. So it all worked out.
sometimes those are good.
Yeah, indeed, indeed.
Hey,
Hello,
Tom.
Tom.
Hey, guys.
We're currently recording, Tom.
Okay.
Usually I hit the record button, but for some reason, little snafu tonight, so we're currently recording.
We won't-
Excellent.
Adrian, we won't ask you what else you did in Vegas then.
Yeah,
I
what
was
happens
gonna
in
say,
Vegas,
part of the
like,
public
stays in
record.
Vegas.
I will now be
Thank
on
you.
my best behavior.
Tom, you're always on your best behavior, aren't you?
Not usually. Adrian, thanks for looking at those the document and the legal language. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I was expecting a much longer document.
Yeah.
Usually there are pages and pages and pages of legalese and, boilerplate, quote unquote, nonsense, dare I say. But this one was pretty straightforward and nothing too crazy, I didn't think.
Good.
So, yeah.
Hey, Tom.
Hello, everyone. Sorry for my
Hello.
Christmas background. I just got all my company Christmas together.
Looks very festive.
Yeah, we
Okay.
appreciate the festivity. So, Tom, we're waiting for a couple of folks to join on, and then we'll get going. We are recording, however, so
Okay, thank you.
restrain yourself. Hi, Grell.
Hi.
So as far as I know, Taylor will be here, and I know that Jerry has to leave at 5:30, but he'll be here.
Hey, Taylor.
Okay,
Hey,
guys.
Taylor.
How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
How you been?
So we'll just wait. I've got it as just 4:31, so we'll give it one more minute, and then we'll kick off the meeting.
okay,
And we've got, Tom, we've got a couple of organizational things we need to do first, so it'll just be
oh,
a
sure, no problem.
few minutes.
Okay,
So I know Mike and I are planning to go to the mayor's holiday party tomorrow, because I don't know what it entails, but party, and Mike and I are there. Anybody else planning to try to get over there?
Yeah, I was, and I forgot about it. So it's the 21st, not the 22nd?
21st.
21st, okay.
Yeah.
What time?
I think it's 3:30, 5:30. That's what I have in my calendar, but hopefully I transcribed that right.
3:30 to 5:30. The 21st is tomorrow. That's a Wednesday. Right? Yeah, 22nd is a Thursday.
Yeah, wait a minute. Right. Hold on.
I think it's the 22nd.
Oh,
22nd.
it is the 22nd?
22nd.
All right, well, I'm glad we had this public conversation.
'Cause it's our
Okay.
long day.
We really look like we're on the ball, right?
Yeah, we got it figured out. It's the holidays. It's hard to keep on top of everything.
Excellent. All right, well, let's, do we have 1, 2, 3, 4? Yeah, so we now have a quorum. So, hi, Jerry. And
Hey, Jerry.
So let's get going. The meeting is called to order, and I'm going to read our little open meeting law blurb here. Consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning gatherings of more than 10 people. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. If you're calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or device, you can raise your hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. I've also heard or participated in other public meetings where I think that if we are voting on measures, as I think we will this evening, it's required to have a roll call vote. With that, Lee is taking the attendance, and the October 18th, 2022 meeting minutes, since we did not meet last month. Anybody have any suggested edits, comments, revisions to that document?
None here.
I guess sounds fine. If everybody's okay with that, say all approved, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Organizational issues with, two things. One is, just wanted to call your attention to this, the surety insurance. Apparently, in the transition to Taylor and I, somehow or other, our insurance bill, surety insurance bill got lost temporarily. it was discovered, and Adria took a look at it. Turns out we are required to have surety insurance, which basically is a guarantee that we will pay our bills with a liability limit of $100,000 at a cost of roughly $360 a year. So we have addressed that and paid that bill, and are now fully compliant with our surety insurance requirement. In talking to our insurance agent, he did raise the issue, and if folks would like to, we can speak to this issue at a future meeting. We do not have directors and liabilities insurance or board insurance. I'm not exactly sure what our exposure is, sort of as a quasi-public board, but it's probably something that we should talk about and look at as whether that's something that we should also have, especially as we contemplate some new projects in the next year or next couple of years. The other thing I just wanted to call people's attention to is that we do have a vacancy on the board.
Just one thing on the policy, that might be something where we would profit from advice from Adria. I'm not really up on what our exposure is, but she may not be either, but I think it'd be easier for her to figure it out than we.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree that we'd want Adria to weigh in and take a look at the specific issues. It's not like we're a 501c3. We're sort of in between city government and a standalone board. So certainly that is something that we can ask Adria to do, and then have that conversation. So Adria, if you want to put that on your to-do list for 2023, that would be great.
I would bet it's come up before with other boards, and so city attorney might have a view of it too.
And Mike, I don't know, you're now the longest standing member of this board, I think. Do you recall it being a conversation in the past?
I don't recall it ever being a conversation before.
Okay.
All right.
Maybe that happened before me.
Okay, it's always in my car anyway.
But Jerry's probably right, Adria. Maybe the first call is to Suzanne Egan. I don't know whether John Cunningham would take that call, or whether he's fully retired and is up enjoying snow country in North Conway.
All right.
So the other issue is, just as a heads up, is vacancy. So we do have a vacancy on the board, which we and the mayor wants to fill in 2023. As you all know, the mayor basically appoints folks to the board. And I know there are a number of people that are potentially interested in joining the board. The statute says that we should have people on our 7-member board that have some experience in industrial development, real estate, finance, municipal government, and low income issues. And I think we do a reasonable job at meeting those criteria. I think with some of the projects that we'll discuss today, issues of development, finance, planning, I think will certainly be relevant, and a new incoming member with those sorts of skills and expertise would be well served. So we don't need to, we've talked about names in the past and everything, but if anybody wants to weigh in on that issue, but I did want to bring it up again, as that's something that should happen in the first quarter of 2023. All right, with that, we're switching order a little bit in the presentations. So I think Tom Jones is going to talk first about the energy capacity study and the proposal that you received based on some conversations that we've had over the last number of months and have included at times either Jay McNiff or Duck at the facilities director at Applied Materials. So he's going to take a moment and talk about the proposal and some of the specifics and the deliverables and the cost, and then we'll turn it over to the board for questions. So Tom, I think it's
Okay,
your forum.
sure. Thanks so much, Tom. My name is Tom Jones. I'm a professional engineer with Daymark Energy Advisors. More than 30 years experience in system planning, operations, and compliance. The project that's in front of us, we're looking to assist EDIC in performing what I call a progressively more rigorous analysis, where it's a multi-phase approach where we initially baseline system planning efforts for the region and drill down to specific load serving areas. And the idea is to get familiar with what's already being planned by National Grid, applied criteria, and then also ask questions about accommodations for future load growth, specific projects, and things of that nature. So the first phase of the project is really a qualitative assessment to get a good handle of practices and essentially a baseline. From that, there's subsequent phases in the project where we transition to a plan of action formation where we work with the city to define a strategy for influence, entertain discussions with different entities and how we may progress. Ultimately, there is, I call it stakeholder influence. It's a phase, but if it leads to any type of presentation with public utility commissions or anything like that, then we've done our due diligence in establishing facts and basis and a willingness to cooperate with other entities. There is an additional phase where it's a quantitative analysis where we go through and do computer simulations of the grid and the delivery. And that's optional at this point in time, and maybe not necessary until we understand the problem. I just want you to know that Daymark is very passionate about the issues that you're facing. We're also located in Massachusetts. I know the CEO is, these issues are close to his heart. The team members have direct experience in this region and interactions with the utilities and even the ISOs in the area. And the other thing is we're able to provide an independent view of the situation, which I think is valuable. So the one item, the deliverable in the first phase is a technical memorandum, which will document the technical issues that are being faced currently, projected in near term and longer term planning horizons, 5 years and 10 years out. We want to establish an idea of what potential improvements may be made, order of magnitude cost, cost causation for, when you look at load growth and specific projects, we have to get into the, some projects are paid for and passed on to ratepayers through, the rates that they pay, and other projects are dependent on other factors. So we want to help sort that out for you, and understand that as well. So that's a real high level. It's all comprehensive study. I think it's a lot of value for the compelling value with access to experts in this area and specific locational knowledge. So I think you're on mute, Tom. Sorry.
So thank you, Tom. A couple of sort of contextual comment. So I
Okay.
think that, and this is really to the board, but is as we've talked about this in the past, that we think that certainly, there's not a lot of sites for the current development in the city of Gloucester. And one of the core things that I think, and I think we agree that we could do for economic development in Gloucester is to make sure that we have the quality and the energy capacity to meet the needs of current folks like McNiff & Company and Applied Materials in the future, and allow for growth or new companies to come in. And that could be a significant contribution to the economic development environment in Gloucester. We all know that there's a number of individual, companies that will have conversations with National Grid. And those conversations, I mean, I think they're often good and responsible, but they take a site-specific look and don't necessarily look at on a larger basis. So rather than a piecemeal look, I think that there's great benefit in this comprehensive assessment that really looks out towards the future and ultimately builds hopefully a consortium of key stakeholders, including our legislators and city officials, in making sure that National Grid will in fact, knows what our future needs could be and will plan accordingly. And that doesn't happen for any large company unless there's appropriate pressure and influence on them. So this is really a qualitative, comprehensive look at this point to identify the gaps and the potential costs with the idea that hopefully we'll build a consortium of key stakeholders and play a critical role in influencing National Grid towards meeting our future economic needs. So that's sort of the layman's broad brush approach. I know that one of the things that Jerry and I have talked about, and Jerry may have further questions, is making sure that this technical memorandum is something that not only identifies gaps and sort of identifies sort of next steps process going forward, but is concrete enough with sort of what those gaps are and estimates of costs, so that it makes it easier for us simply to build a consortium, right? So that there is concrete information, or even if it's estimate and orders of magnitude costs, so that somebody can appreciate sort of what has to happen, and whether you're the city of Gloucester or the town of Manchester or Addison Gilbert Hospital, you'll see that there is benefit in a group, a consortium of such folks to continue to implement a strategy going forward. So Jerry, so we'll start with Jerry, but certainly others, I want to hear your comments and questions.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. Well, I think you put the issue very well. I mean, this is a good approach. Great team. I know some of you, but the proposal really doesn't provide what we need in order to inform both ourselves with our responsibility, but probably more importantly, to inform the folks that we would like to gather into the consortium, like Jay, who's on this call, Applied, and others. We'll need a lot of others. But at the end of the day, the work product that, as I read it, at least that is proposed, is really not going to tell anybody anything about what they're signing up for in terms of cost. It's not an approximation, it's not an order of magnitude, there's nothing. And I think that's really a kind of a fundamental problem.
Is that something I can clarify, Tom and Jerry? My understanding when I first began with this engagement is that we're really trying to establish a baseline and to inform our
Define
future.
baseline, because that phrase has come
When I
up.
say baseline, my understanding, there's existing power quality problems, inability to serve future load, and resiliency is an issue with disturbances on the system. I'm trying to characterize the performance basically of the system as it is now. And then in light of future loads being added to the system, what needs are necessary in terms of improvements so that those loads can be reliably served.
So
And
you're saying that a baseline is the current system performance and what's needed in order to what?
well, when I think of baseline, it's the current state of the system and ability to serve current load needs in a reliable, high quality fashion. Then the next step, once we have a baseline and we understand what the issues are, is being able to accommodate future load growth in a reliable fashion. And we want to know what improvements are being made to the system to be able to support that load growth. And I think the proposal, the way in my mind, it's a qualitative assessment to understand the landscape, and from that, progressively more rigorous analysis can be applied. But that comes with more expense and things of that nature. So I think we're really just trying to communicate what the current status is, ability to support current load or future loads from a high level perspective. And then this identify the different stakeholders and the issues they're facing, and bring those together in one place so that we have a common voice. That's my understanding. And I think we have a lot of value to offer with that, and from many perspectives.
Forgive me, but I think that's way short of what we need, and also what I understood that we talked about. We could organize folks without a study. They know what they need. They know what their problems are. They may not have the technical knowledge of what Grid is prepared to do, but I don't know how much. I'm not clear about how much of that is even going to come out of this study. But in any case, one thing's for sure, and that is there's going to be additional cost to folks to get that additional ability from Grid, and folks are going to need to know, at least on an order of magnitude basis, maybe more narrowly than that, from the get-go, what are they looking at? I mean, is this a $5 million hook they're about to be caught by, or what? Before they sign up for even a $12 or now $15,000 study, which is a whole nother thing. I mean, that bothered me. What was described as a slight increase is almost 50%. So I didn't understand that either.
I can offer my technical opinion. The studies of this nature typically are we try to match the effort to the initial request, and that more rigorous technical evaluation can be performed. We're the technical experts. The studies can be quite a bit more costly, and we're trying to understand and meet you where you're at, and have a plan of action to go from there. So certainly studies can, they range in price and level of effort, and it all is tied to what the scope is and what you need.
So I'm I sort of agree with Jerry, but it's softer, my concerns, and I'm wondering whether I understand that fundamentally this is a gap analysis, right? And it's understanding where the current system is now versus where it's going to need to be based on growth factors that we'll hear about from key folks at Blackburn and others, and also anticipated, how if we were to bring some other companies here, et cetera. So I understand that gap analysis. What I'm wondering is, as a point of clarification, is as part of that technical memorandum and deliverable, whether you can identify order of magnitude costs and or fundamental strategies that are, I got to believe that there's an 80-20 rule here, that 80% of the time, the following 5 strategies to influence National Grid are likely to be implemented, a sense of what those strategies are, and the range of costs associated. So if we can, I understand the baseline, I understand this gap analysis. I think where the key thing is a little more of a concrete with cost roadmap of what this initiative, the value of this initiative, and the costs that could be, have to be paid, or the value. I mean, hopefully there's also value to individual companies who might otherwise be negotiating with National Grid, and a broader consortium can hopefully, whether it's share those costs or put influence on National Grid to help minimize those costs. So it's on that deliverable side that I think we can hopefully reach a point where we agree on.
Tom Jones, this is Mike. I have a question. You guys sound like you've been around for a long time. The value of the kinds of services you provide, of course, the gap, the risk, the analyses that you can provide. I guess the question I have is, where may have done this before, and what, can you speak to what order of magnitude costs in those similar scenarios, the folks were actually faced with?
Yeah, from my experience, and with the phase one that we're talking about with the qualitative analysis, I think we can combine experience and knowledge of order of magnitude cost and potential projects. I think that would be pending later validation through a more deterministic approach. But we do have the experience. Daymark's been around for more than 40 years. I have more than 32 years experience in this kind of work. Order of magnitude cost estimates can be arrived at. I just qualify that specifics and narrowing of the cost. I think it gives you the upper bound. And then we refine the cost with more detailed analysis. Does that make sense?
Well,
So
it
we
makes sense that there are a lot of unknowns that I'm comfortable that you can't foresee the future and such, but that's why I'm kind of trying to turn it back to, you have vast experience. Can you tell us anything about a similar scenario where you've worked for a client and what they faced, like how it turned out, like what did it cost? It may not, I know it may not be apples to apples, right? But just generally get a sense. I haven't met you before, so
okay.
I don't know much. I've read your proposal, but
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that go into the cost and the definition of the improvements. Regional, locational, the natural geography of the region we're trying to supply energy to. From a top down, the bulk transmission needs to the area is the first thing to look at. How the energy is distributed within the city, number of feeders, how things are backed up. There's a lot of locational specifics that have to be considered in defining the improvement plans, we call it. And usually that's done. I mean, if we want to move to a more deterministic approach, that's fine with me. I'm glad to help with that, but my understanding is that we're trying to first qualitatively describe the situation before we go to more in-depth study. There's not a,
And I think that's right, Tom. I mean, and I think that was consistent with the original conversations, both because of budgetary reasons on our part, and your initial recommendations that this is a good place to start to do this qualitative evaluation. I'm thinking, hoping that we can get to a point in this core deliverable, which is that it's a little more concrete than what we feel like right now.
okay. If, I'm looking for specific feedback on the first phase is, I go back, it's a qualitative phase based on publicly available information. That's really the first step, is document the criteria, document whether there's adherence to the criteria, document the planning improvements already being planned, and really establish a firm knowledge base.
Yeah.
Think of it this way, Tom. Try to put yourself in our shoes. We're going to put together a consortium. Some people inside the park, some people outside the park. We're going to ask them to ultimately participate in this project. They justly are going to ask us, what are we signing up for? What are we going to get? What's it going to cost? And this proposal, as it's now written, does not promise to answer either of those.
Is there a way to structure the proposal with some assumptions? So where there are unknowns, can you build out some assumptions that we could look to, so we can frame up like prices with it, within those the constraints of the assumptions?
I can take that away and think about it. The locational factors are what concern me, and the topology of the transmission grid to feed the area, to be honest.
Isn't that something you're going to look at, or that you're probably already?
Yeah, I have engineer Kate Palacios has already done work in the area, and so she's familiar with the bulk delivery issues, and so that's something you're gaining immediate access to with this project. I have another engineer, Audrey Newcomb, who's also a ISO New England operational planning engineer, former, with quite a bit of experience in the region as well. So we have the right team and the right skill sets. We're familiar with the area. I think we approach it from top down, looking at transmission, then we get into distribution, and then we get into what resources are being planned, like batteries, solar, things of that nature. Whether they're tied to the distribution feeders or they're tied to the transmission grid, it all matters in the planning efforts.
I get all that. But once you know all that, is it not possible to start giving some ballpark estimates of?
Well, I think what you're asking me to do is more in-depth analysis that would move into assessment of feeders, and from a quantitative basis. I think I'm sensing
it's more complicated than it has to be. Given whatever, and I understand that's what engineers do. You look at the granular detail, but at some point,
I'm trying to balance the budget against the current ask, and meet and get the conversation moving and be able to help with decision making.
Decision making requires some idea of costs going forward in an environment, I understand, where the best you can do is a very rough approximation.
Well, the usually the costs are tied to an improvement plan, and I'm willing to work to develop a conceptual plan that is just that, pending later analysis.
Well, I guess my view is how you get there is your bailiwick.
Yeah,
What I understand much better is where we need you to get
yeah,
in order for us to get started. And we need to get a core group of folks together,
mhm,
some understanding of what it is what lies ahead, what they're signing up for. And and at least what of their options are under consideration.
yeah.
How that
You know,
affects them.
I think phase one would go a long ways towards providing information to understand that.
Maybe to an engineer, but I know it won't to me because there's no
Okay.
dollar signs.
So, I mean, I like this idea in clarifying, of a conceptual plan that would include some of the, first stab estimates of costs and projects. If we can agree that that could be part of this deliverable. Let me, Jay McNiff is a large property owner in Blackburn Industrial Park and has been involved in some of these conversations. I'd love Jay's thoughts on I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the proposal, but thoughts on what he would like to see out of again this initial qualitative preliminary assessment. Jay?
Okay.
Sure, thanks, Tom. And I think a lot of this conversation and initiative started around a concern for not just our property in particular. We have about 42 commercial tenants, various sizes, 0 to 100, but also Applied Materials, who's a significant property owner and significant employer here in town, Tom, as you probably already know. And the ability for them to go ahead and continue to apply their trade effectively and efficiently relies on excellent quality power. Meaning, when I say excellent quality, uptime that's significant, because we've had some brownout issues, we've had some quality issues of power. The lights don't tell the honest to God truth about how dirty the power can be here.
Okay.
And so this initiative came out of that and that discussion recently, on top of two projects that I'm personally involved in, which is another 34,000 square foot building that's not on the grid right now. It was on the grid, got taken off many years ago, coming back onto the power grid itself. And we've proposed a larger, I'm sorry to say, I don't know the exact megawatts, but it's 180,000 square feet of solar.
Okay.
That is kind of, unfortunately, I'm sorry, muddying the waters a little bit here in that we've done our interconnect applications. We got pushed into a potential group study situation. And so my somewhat reluctance to join in any participation on the study quite yet rests on the study to study whether we need to be into a group study. So it's literally a study to study whether we need to be put into a group study, yet that's holding us all up, or at least from my perspective, it's holding a lot of this up.
You bring up a really good point in that we need to decompose the problem. You mentioned power quality issues, which it's one specialty of study. You mentioned basically a new generation resource being applied locally. And then the third dimension is overall bulk delivery to the area. They all need to come together, but each has a little bit different flavor and view to consider with improvement planning, especially the power quality problems, because that's a specialty I'm very familiar with. And my approach to those problems is a little bit different than supply adequacy and capacity. So I understand those are that uniqueness, and we need to approach the problem with that in mind.
I'm certainly one voice of what we hope to be a consortium of, other users, other key users, other whatever. And I don't want to speak just for myself, because I think this is certainly a group solution. Understanding what the ultimate needs are, what the ultimate goal is, and I'm not sure that we're there personally. I mean, defining what the problem is, that's one. Defining the ability to solve that problem, that's two. Under that heading, what's that cost going to be? And do we have the appetite for that? I mean, we may not. We may decide that suddenly we can't go any further anyway. We've maxed out. On top of that, you look at the agenda tonight on about potential for a Condon Road expansion, which will be a power hungry. It seems all tenants coming this way right now that I speak with are all extreme power users compared to how they used to be. Gloucester was a fishing town. Gloucester was a storage town. They had a lot of warehouse stuff, a lot of high bay stuff. Granted, we had freezers, a lot of freezers, but we've changed. We've come around, to a much more higher tech, higher need for power use to continue our growth. So I think that's kind of where this higher level conversation started. How do we continue that path, or can we? And is the return on investment, if we have to spend $5 to $10 million, maybe more, a la what Cell Signaling is dealing with right now in Manchester, is it worth it? Who pays for that? And is there a return on investment? I wonder. So not to take over again, but I just worry about the study addressing those needs, which are somewhat echoed in everybody I talk with. And I'm sure the board and the EDIC has had these conversations. It's just, to Jerry's point, I'm not sure we've fully addressed that thought in the proposal.
But to me, you're echoing there's a myriad of issues.
Oh yeah.
That are, it's just not a capacity expansion project. It's a myriad of issues affecting the entire region, in my opinion, and my knowledge of other clients we're working with. So.
And frankly, to interrupt real quick, maybe increasing the quality of the power solves a lot of the issue versus just adding carte blanche, let's open the floodgates a little bit more and add more power. Maybe adding quality power could help too. I don't know. That might be where you could add some knowledge.
So to that point, Tom, is that something that could be part of the deliverable and part of, we'll call it a conceptual plan, where again, you could identify based on this gap analysis, some of sort of the core issues, the problem, the problem solving steps that could be taken with a sense of the cost, but where and I know you can't untangle these, but the quality issue versus the capacity issue, is that something where we could get out of this study where we would in fact have some sense of a roadmap? And then the follow-up steps are going to be quantitative analysis that would test hypotheses and validate which makes the most sense, or what the real costs are, and or what the return on investment may or may not be.
That makes
perfect. We understand that it's probably a regional issue. You'll help us decide that more definitively, I hope. But if that's the case, that's really an important thing to understand, because it changes the way we get there entirely. It changes the politics. It changes who we have to talk with. It changes whom we need to gather around in a consortium. We're not just talking about an expansion at the park. This is a systemic problem at National Grid, as I see it. And we're going to be the ones that take it on if we do, and we need to know what the exposure is.
Okay. Thanks for that. That makes perfect sense to me, and I echo what Tom is saying. If I'm able to incorporate a conceptual plan, that gives me something I can generate cost estimates and things like that around. And I'm approaching the problem from the different dimensions. I want to separate power quality from supply adequacy and capacity, because they're managed differently. So, and I respect that. And I'm willing to go back and look at, language to articulate conceptual plan effort, and then derive costs from that.
So you think that that could be hopefully clarified, and that would not necessarily require additional costs? I mean, I don't need to, put you on the,
I would give you my, my best engineering judgment on what I think a potential plan would be and consist of. And then the cost would be order of magnitude cost. And then I think we're both in agreement on that would be a really good starting point. And that helps me I had to grab onto a plan of some sort to be able to cost estimate and all that kind of work. So yeah, I'm comfortable in doing that.
okay. So what I'd like to do, I think, is make a motion, and then second, we can discuss it, and whether, we want to, get everybody's input here, and whether at this juncture to approve or not approve the motion pending, some revision in the language concerning the deliverable vis-a-vis a concept plan. Are folks okay with me? I mean, we can still ask questions after the motion. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the December 19, 2022 proposal from Daymark Energy Advisors to provide advisory services to the electrical system development needs for Gloucester to ensure future energy capacity in the parks in the city, pending revisions to phase 1 deliverables associated with a concept plan. Can I have a second on that? Okay, Taylor, a second. So further discussion is that, are we as a board, are we comfortable with that or not? Jerry, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm not. I think we've already expressed our support for this group and for the general idea of going forward. And I don't, at our last meeting, and I don't see the need to do that again. I think where we're at now is struggling with the specifics of the proposal. And I think there's some agreement around the table, at least, that the specifics are not adequate at this point. Tom Jones has agreed to develop something that will be, and I think that's what we should be voting on when and if it happens.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, this is Mike. I'm coming down more with Jerry on this versus approving something that we don't have eyes on yet.
Okay, anybody else want to comment? And then we have a vote, and if it's a negative vote, that's fine. And but it would be to ask Tom to revise the language, and then I think come back in the meeting in January with a new proposal. Jerry?
Yeah, I just want to be clear that a negative vote, at least my negative vote, is not in opposition to DMARC in any way, or into the idea of going ahead with this in any way. It's that we don't have something right now in front of us that we can approve, and that's what we're looking for, and that's what Tom Jones and the rest of the folks at DMARC have agreed to provide.
So I'm no expert in rules of order here. Can I simply, as the proponent, take that off the table then? And then we won't vote on it, because I think we are in agreement that we want to make this happen. And just and then we'll hopefully get a new slightly revised proposal on the phase 1 deliverable, and then have a brief discussion and a vote next month.
Yeah,
So
we should
ahead.
just probably get Tom, like, amongst ourselves, get him a little bit more exact idea what we're looking for, with Jerry, with deliverables. And then maybe it would be better to have a little more time with that plan, so we could maybe bounce it back and forth with Tom, before the meeting. And that way we can just come to the meeting and vote on it and not have
Right.
these major discussions.
I think it's an excellent idea, Taylor. Thank you.
Okay.
And so, so let's not get it the day before.
Yeah, no, and we're gonna
Yeah.
lose like a week or two right here, but like right
Yeah.
that first week in January, let's get Tom like our wish list of what we really want to see, keep it within the budget, and then be able to vote next meeting.
Yeah, and if it turns out there's not enough time between then and our next meeting to actually develop something that everybody's happy with, it's not the end of the world if we do it in February. Just
Yeah,
keep
right.
talking until we've got it.
All right, great. So I'd like to make a motion to take away the motion to vote on the.
I think you could just withdraw your motion.
Yeah, or can I have a second, and are we all in agreement?
I think we're in agreement.
We're in
Yeah,
agreement that
I
you're gonna
think
withdraw
so.
the motion. Absolutely.
What I heard then, Tom, is that we will get to you in early January. sort of
Okay.
Our version of the sort of the wish list, or what we'd like to have in the conceptual plan. And then no doubt we'll work back and forth with what
Okay.
can work within your familiarity with how these qualitative assessments are done in the budget, et cetera.
Okay.
And then hopefully we'll have refine that language and have it back to us, a week before the board
Okay.
meeting. Hopefully it happens in January, but if it happens in February, let's focus on getting it right.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you need a conversation, which I would expect you would, after you hear from us, let's have that with whoever's available on this side and whoever you think is appropriate on your side to chime in on it.
Sure. Well, thank you for that opportunity. I'm really eager to help out, and apologies, I'm really trying hard to express my engineering concepts into business terms, concepts, and help us get there.
Yeah,
No,
we're here on that,
excuse me.
Tom. Thank you for your proposal and the work you put into it. And yeah, let's consider it a first pass, and kind of, this is like step 2 of the needs analysis. We'll
Okay.
work with you to clarify specifics on what we need. And
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks so much,
Great.
Tom, and the
Thank-
rest of your team. We look forward to working with you to get this to a state where everybody's happy with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, my thanks as well, Tom.
Okay.
you,
Thank
Tom.
you. Bye.
Thanks, Tom.
Happy New Year.
All right, so we're gonna switch gears here and allow Weston and Sampson. I think Kent Nichols and Corey Rapucci are here to talk about the proposal that was also shared with you, which is the feasibility study and development potential for the expansion of Condolin Road. And Taylor and I have met with them. They are familiar with the work that was done previously and have revised the proposal based on a variety of current costs and our desire to, some things have changed in Gloucester, certainly the wastewater treatment plant potential, among other things, energy issues, and to incorporate those sort of changing issues into the current proposal. So I'll hand it over to you guys to walk the board through this proposal, please.
Sure. Thank you, Tom. I'm Kent Nichols with Weston Sampson. I have in the distant past done some work with the EDIC. I think the last time I was at a meeting was probably back around 2010. So it's been a while, and I think I don't know if any of you had your tenure go back that far, but if some of you remember me, good job, because it's been a while. So with me tonight is Corey Rapucci, who's my design engineer and project manager lead. Corey is kind of a specialist in certain things that have to be addressed in the project, but it's a pretty diverse project. So we have a few folks that will be involved from Weston Sampson standpoint. Also with us is Jeff Hutton. And Jeff, if you can wave, Jeff is also involved in our team in these types of planning projects, particularly when we're looking at this type of a development and capacity and all the related issues. And Corey and Jeff and I work pretty closely together from our Reading, Mass office. We have a number of other folks who would be involved in the project as well, and we didn't bring everybody tonight, but we probably notable for discussion would be the leader of our planning group. One thing that's very different about Weston and Sampson since 2010, when we originally did some of this work, and even prior to that, when we were working on some of the initial Blackburn Industrial Park work, was the nature of our firm has changed significantly. We're more than twice the size that we were as a firm. We're all up and down the East Coast. And one thing that growth has brought Weston Sampson is the ability to add expertise. So we now, very relevant to this project, we now have in-house planning staff. And we have a couple of very senior planners that are involved in this project. One of those is Jim Reardon, who's been in the business for about 30 years and has served in a role with both state regulatory agencies, but also most recently has been leading our planning group at Weston Sampson for the past 4 or 5 years. In addition, we have Sue Mara, who's been a senior planner that has joined us only in the past few years. And as Jim's team has grown with planners, Sue has been a municipal planner for a couple of cities, including most recently the city of Pawtucket in Rhode Island. And Sue herself has 20+ years experience in the planning business. In addition, they have brought on through a partnership or recommended for your project that we would bring on through a partnership, a sub-consultant, Jean Boyle of Jean Boyle Consulting, who is now out on her own and has done a bunch of consulting work for a number of different agencies and with a couple of the bigger planning groups. And Jean brings some specialized experience to help kind of fill in that experience a little bit more, to just fill us out. And I think, Corey, earlier today, you forwarded some qualifications information for Jean, because that was a question that we got from you folks earlier on. And I apologize that wasn't actually in the original package. We probably should have sent you a package with all resumes. And at this point, we can also do that for the rest of the staff if you're interested. But notably, we have a lot of other folks who would probably be involved in small roles, because you're asking a question that has quite a broad spectrum when we talk about the Condolan Road Industrial Park area. But for the most part, I think that the 3 of us on the call today, plus the 3 folks I just mentioned, would be the primary folks involved in the work we would do. So I don't want to belabor a lot of points, but I guess what we'll do is, just by way of introduction, and Tom, if you have other ideas you want to direct us on what you really want to hear more about, that's great. But we were approached by your team with the questions about, what could be the next steps in the planning. And it had been a while since we revisited this. I remember Corey and I both worked a little bit with Roger Alcott when he did the original study back in 2010. We looked at some of the specific areas with Roger. I actually advised Roger on some of the other pieces. Roger had been involved in some of the prior projects in the city. Roger has moved on, has actually been working on the owner's representative services for the new Green Line extension that you probably heard on the news opened recently for the MBTA. So he's kind of refocused into some heavy transportation planning, but it's allowed us to kind of still apply some of our background knowledge of the site. 10 or 12 years goes by pretty quickly. So believe it or not, we still have a little bit of recollection, pretty decent recollection, I think, of the site and some of the challenges. So the goal was to kind of revisit where we've been, what could be possible for development on the site, focus on some of the things we heard about when we got a pretty good tour of the site from Tom and Taylor, and we appreciate the time you folks spent with us, and kind of help you folks make a decision as to, okay, what would it look like if we were to update the information we had previously, look a little more closely at some of the challenging issues, what's changed, what should we be aware of, what are the likely big picture issues associated with this, what could some of the expectations be about the planning and that we could predict for the development of the site. And then one of the key issues here is update some of the key figures we had about the mapping and the site use, but probably most notably also put together some updated costs, which is one thing that was in that original presentation. And I think our vision right now is we do that in about 6 steps. I think you've all seen our proposal. We propose to start off with an initial meeting where we would kind of make sure we're on the ground, connecting to the exact issues that you folks really want to connect with. One thing we do find is there's usually 1 or 2 areas where you want to dig a little deeper, and probably a couple areas where we can shift some of our initial thought on level of effort to kind of cover those a little bit better. So we've got some provision in there for that. The second step in parallel to that would be pulling together as much as we can for data that helps illustrate what might have changed in our projections or expectations for the site. 12 years, a good number of things have changed. Quite a few things haven't changed. What the site looks like, with the exception of a couple of properties that have been, improved a little bit. But geophysical conditions tend to not change. Obviously, geology works slower, but things like regulations and the market conditions, the amount of other available developable space in Gloucester, and some of that local pressure that you folks have for that. I think all of those are key changes that you've been facing. Notably, we'll try to put that together and capture that as quickly as we can and share that with you in an initial deliverable. The second thing that we had proposed to do, and I think Jim felt strongly about this, was to help identify some questions for you folks that we would want to ask to key stakeholders, and then engage those key stakeholders in specific discussions and try to boil up from those discussions some of the key points that we hear that would affect you probably more directly when you've got key landholders and key other developers that might come into play. We see putting that process together again and sharing a small deliverable from that process. Next would be a look at the infrastructure, and this is one of the key areas that you've got to spend some time on. Notably, infrastructure being the roadway itself, but also things like water and wastewater service. And the one issue you've also started the meeting tonight with, which is discussion of power. Try to capture in some detail changes to water and wastewater and roadway construction. I would say this is probably one of the more challenging parts of the work. And the reason it's more challenging is because the market costs and the forces that are in play right now in the way these projects get built have driven these project costs up significantly, not through normal consumer price index and type inflation, which has been high enough as it is, but also a lot of market pressures on development such that costs have inflated quite a bit. And there's kind of a different business model out there for some of these projections. So there's a really good need to look again at that utility aspect. And then the next step would be obviously to kind of compile everything we've seen, what we project, and try to put some updated cost information together. At the same time, also help recapture what the lay of the land looks like from a standpoint of funding, because the state has advanced some of the funding programs to the point where they're somewhat predictable. I would say Corey and I have been involved in some recent projects where we've been successful in getting MassWorks grants, and through the new Community One-Stop program, there's a number of additional grant programs that have now been all kind of bonded under those programs. But there are a number of other opportunities that continue to bubble up, including EDA funding, which Corey, we got for a project a ways back for the city, not too far back.
Planning work back in industrial or in Blackburn industrial.
Blackburn.
Yeah.
Yep. So all of those funding sources, and then maybe some new ones might bubble up as we go through the course of the work. And then last but not least, the final task would be to kind of assemble that with each of those mini deliverables, assemble that package into an overall report for you folks that you can kind of take kind of a one glance opportunity to see what we're seeing, what it looks like, what the market conditions kind of reflect in general, what the overall development plan might look like, what those costs are like, and really get a snapshot of what some of the challenges are and what you're going to have to face in order to go from where you are now to get to a point where you've got some attractive developable land with the proper resources available to allow folks to make good use of that. That's kind of the snapshot. So I don't know if that's sufficient for you folks. If you want to, at this point, I would offer up, Tom, if you have other things you'd like to hear about, or particularly what we'd like to hear is your questions and thoughts.
I'm going to ask Taylor to, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this updated proposal, but who's certainly most familiar with the area and the site and the players. Just does that sound consistent with, your expectations and the and the fundamentals of a good evaluation?
Yeah, no, I like it, and I like that it goes a little bit further into figuring out maybe some funding options. I don't think that's one that we had discussed or thought that you guys would really cover. I think it's very important. There's one of the the stakeholders, one of them actually owns a third of the land. So that's obvious that we want him on board. And then, I was going to bring up him and another couple people that are very familiar with the site that would probably be good to talk to even before you, I know you're familiar with the geography of it and everything, but the makeup of it, but it's, those guys are up there digging around and they actually know a little bit about it. And then really looking at, I guess the feasibility of tying in, I guess we need the two options of sewer or a standalone wastewater treatment plant, but I don't know if it's worth looking at one closely, or if you can, just state which one's going to be the best option, and then we just fight in that direction instead of wasting a lot of time figuring out which the best direction would be. And then I think it would be pretty obvious to figure out if there's enough water up there, and I think there's almost not, just because I'm up there and I'm familiar with it. So I don't know if the water main that goes out there would be enough. So again, I think that's a pretty quick and easy question.
Yeah, I think what had been indicated before, and we'll reevaluate, is that the water main that's out there now is inadequate to supply pressure, not sufficient pressure.
Right.
And we also need to, in order to, provide pressure and fire protection, then the plan was to bring in about a 250,000 gallon water storage tank. So there are various options that'll need to be analyzed for that part of the overall project.
Yeah, so that's the beauty of it. You guys have already dealt with some of these issues, and those issues obviously haven't changed. So no, overall, I think it's good. I think it's a step in the right direction. And then, from there, I'd want to go talk to the city and other people that we need to get behind us on this project, because if they aren't behind us, there's not much more we can do in the way of running with it. Without them. But I think with this study, at least we have the knowledge and the numbers that we need to argue the point, either direction. And again, that power, it's good that these two things are kind of coinciding together, because I think the power is going to be as important as anything else, unless we go all solar up there or something, which doesn't help. So
yeah, I think one of the key things, Taylor, and we've talked about this, is if you don't have adequate utility, you're going to start to narrow your range of your developers that are going to be interested in the sites.
Yep.
And your goal is to attract something near highest and best use, and not being fettered by limited power, I think would be very important. So just like not being fettered by limited sewer capacity, if you're on-site systems, you're going to have a major constraint there, or water pressures or any of those other things. So I think the utilities do become a very key factor here.
And we obviously were planning a deeper dive into the wastewater, connection to the treatment plant. That previously wasn't an option, just due to the primary standards that the treatment plant was operating under. But now that there's a plan in place to upgrade that facility, that becomes a very real discussion and option. So we want to look at capacity that's available, if any, what the capacity needs would be for the parcels in the Area B development, and then have discussions about connecting adjacent parcels as well, because if you're going to be building a collection system and then have a pump station to transmit flow to the treatment facility, it would seem like you'd want to connect as many users as you could to offset some of the costs. So but those are all discussions that we need to have with the working group. But the wastewater options have changed significantly.
Yeah.
In our mind, we want to dive into that.
And probably for the better. That's the good news.
Oh, yeah.
It was not necessarily going to be super costly to do small septic systems, but it also doesn't allow you to have a range of great use for the properties. If we can allow some wetter processes, the costs for for getting that work done and getting that flow over to the treatment plant are higher, but no question, you can attract more valuable properties and better use. So,
Right, and it's the group we're looking for. If we're looking for biomanufacturing and stuff like that, they can be very water intensive. So we may as well, I think we talked about it before. There's a lot of times you go forward something, and if for 10% more, you can give yourself the capacity, that you need versus, stopping a little bit short. So
yeah. And some of those users too are very, they're pretty sophisticated now when they're looking for space. They think about things like not just their initial need, but they think about expandability. And I think one of the big limitations when it comes to water and wastewater particularly is if they know they can get this much on there, but that's it, you're maxed on the site, their long-term investment and need, and really from the city standpoint, that you want folks to come in, not just come in, but come in and stay.
right.
Be successful and thrive and hopefully expand on site. And I think
Right.
that potential to say what you start with doesn't necessarily have to be your ultimate cap. You don't have to move out of the city again when you get to that point. That's a pretty powerful tool from a planning standpoint.
Well, and I think again, that ties into the energy capacity issues for sure. I mean, I know that cell signaling, looking at Manchester, their ultimate plan for energy needs, they can only meet, 30% of them at this point. So, it's part of a long-term development plan that includes expanding their campus, but expanding the energy supply that National Grid would need to provide. Folks, other comments, questions, observations? Okay. So this is the case in which, we have been, we haven't seen it yet, but we have $40,000 that was in the approved state budget. So, we would be looking to fill from our coffers, the delta there, the remaining $15,000 to contribute towards this proposal if we were to go forward. There's both a question of, is everybody comfortable with the scope and sort of the expanded scope? And then secondly, are folks comfortable with, putting in $15,000 of our money towards this evaluation and feasibility study?
I am.
You are comfortable. Well, I've written out a second motion. I'm a little hesitant now to do it, but now that I've got it ready, so what the heck?
Jerry's not here, so we're good.
I think you made the right call on the last one. So, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the December 16th, 2022 proposal from Weston and Sampson to provide the EDIC with an updated feasibility analysis for the further development of Condlin Road, Cape Ann Industrial Park in what is referred to as Area B. Do I have a second? Taylor.
Second.
Any further discussion?
You just one point, Tom. This is Mike, my own mute. I guess are we, we're voting with a contingency, right? That we actually received the funding, the $40,000 contribution.
We've gotten a verbal that we will receive it.
Yeah, so we don't have it in our bank account.
Yeah.
My understanding and Taylor's is that it's 100% sure that we will receive that money.
Understood. Yeah, and I'm not doubting whoever was on the other end of the phone. I'm just saying, or should we have a contingency? We want to just represent that that 40,000. If the whole 55 was coming out of the EDIC coffers, we might would it change anything? If it wouldn't, then let's go ahead without any contingency. But
well, I mean, we still have the money ourselves, but you're right. Maybe it would change something. I haven't really thought of that contingency.
And given the I couldn't point out in the contract, but So you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, if we were, there's a bunch of mini deliverables on the way to the complete deliverable. If we were to run into financial issues and be concerned about us footing the entire bill, we could give appropriate notice and stop the project moving forward. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're pretty flexible schedule wise. I mean, we originally started with the schedule, and Corey and Jeff and I have gone back and forth on this a little bit. We started with a schedule that was a little tighter originally, and we looked at it just logistically with all the back and forth that you folks need in the collection of information and the amount of time we want you to have to interact with each of those deliverables. And so we stretched it to the 6 months. So unless you have a real hard date that you need an answer on, we can be extremely flexible on the schedule. We can pause in between each step as well, if that's helpful. I would say we just need a little bit of roll-in time to be able to factor it in if we need to stretch that a little. But for certain, if we get into the beginning of the process and you still need some time to confirm, where the funding is, when it's going to arrive in your bank account, or how that's going to work, we're flexible. We can do that with you. Yeah.
Okay, but I'll follow up really quickly and get an answer. I'll tell them it's kind of a go, and I just need to know when we're going to get the funding. I just haven't put a lot of pressure on them because I knew we were kind of still in this phase. So, but I can get an answer on that.
Yeah,
Sometimes in order to encumber it too, they'll want you to sign an agreement and send back a copy of your expected expenditure, like a copy of our contract or something like that. So you may just want to verify what they may just want some paperwork from you to get you the check. So
You know what? I'll send this proposal out to them and say, hey, this is where we are. We're gonna put in 15. We need your 40. I need to know when I can get it. So, that's fine.
And Tom, to maybe provide a bit more information, it is, we do plan to bill on a percent complete basis.
Yep.
Okay.
So any other comments, questions?
I missed what the source was of the other 40. Where does that come from?
It's a good question. It's in the state budget, but the exact source of the, economic development department, I couldn't tell you. I remember the original language.
So it's the state actually puts it's become more common in the past year or so, but the state had put a lot of line item money in for various communities for specific things. And it was basically wish list money that each of your legislative representatives for the different regions, including Gloucester, had put in wish lists to the budget group. And they
Yeah, it was something that Bruce Tarr put in.
Yeah. So
Yep.
Your senator and your representative pushed for this, and it got preserved as a literal line item when they put the budget together.
Okay, and then if not used for this purpose, it goes unused is what
Right.
right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So, and then part two of my question is, provided this goes perfectly and we get just a great result from this study, what would be the next thing that happens that the EDIC is then saying, wow, we got this study, this is what happened. What would be the next thing?
So my understanding and concept would be is that then we would work with the city and develop essentially a development plan that would actually have to be approved by city council, I believe, and that we would then embark on implementing the strategies and developing the funding, et cetera, to make this project happen.
And would it be privately developed or developed by the city?
I think all options are on the table, but this day and age, I think it's some public-private partnership is the most likely scenario.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that was kind of part of my question. You guys were going to look for some funding, and I guess, and we don't really know that, but like, what phase do we bring it to? I mean, are we putting in the utilities and the roads and everything, and then we're hoping to sell it and recoup our money, or are there other phases at which you can get out of it, make it go private? Because I think there's people in the state and people in the city that would be into the development once we know the pricing, and once we can justify those expenses. So
yeah, and the implementation is very much subject to how you want to do that. I mean, there is always an option that if you've got the initial development is something you want to get started just to get the utilities stubbed in there. And then at some point in time, you've got someone who wants the first 3-4 acres for a project. Maybe they partner with you to build that section of the road as well, and you segment it up. I think the limitation you're going to have is there are some physical features that you're probably going to improvements to utility service lines that have to come to the site or work related to the site are likely the things you have to front. Sometimes you can wait to build the road, but you can't wait to build the connect. If it's a connection to the sewer system, you can't wait to build the connection to the sewer system, or you can't wait to improve the water pressure by connecting to the elevated storage tank or putting a cistern and pump system in. You can't wait to have the improvements to the power system, because you're going to have very few people who are going to sign a development agreement when they don't know if they can get water, sewer, power on the site. Most of the time, if you get all those things in place, most developers are comfortable saying, okay, I got to put in 250 feet of road or 560 feet of road or something.
And this study was done before and nothing occurred as a result. Was that the big reason why? Is that right? The study has been done before.
My
There was a really
understanding is the-
broad study. They studied 3 different areas. This parcel, like a 400 acre parcel.
There was some
And-
large more than 100 acre areas, both if you were heading out of town on 128 on either side of the highway.
Looked at a flyover there and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been done. It just hasn't been, and it was done and we can send it all to you. It's a lot of really
I'm
interesting
sure I'd have
reading.
no idea what I'm looking at, but I can also appreciate that folks would be worried, like we're commissioning a study to confirm the results of a study.
No,
And
so
the
now
original-
the
the
things
original
that have
work on
changed
this
now
was-
is we have access to sewer. The costs have changed, so it's not that.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not one for studies.
And the original work on this was very conceptual, Taylor, too. It
Yes.
was kind of more of a, it wasn't really a study, it was more of a concept plan. So when we refer back to the work that was done before, it's a series of concept plans with some very basic assumptions.
Yeah, and very broad. They're very broad strokes. Like
We're putting-
the wastewater treatment plant could be at 100 to whatever, very broad. It was anywhere from 100 million to 500 million. I had no idea.
And
So we're
the main
hoping to
thing-
really narrow in on this site, figure out what exactly the plan would be. Say this is the, and that's it. Like, I just want to know, if we find out it's too much, and any developer, and we can talk to Jay and say, hey, this is what it would be per acre, and he'd say, you're out of your mind. Stop, just stop, and that's fine. Then we know, walk away.
But the reality is, Gretel, that this is sort of the lowest hanging fruit in the terms of really being able to get to that point.
Yeah,
the
got it. And so
others-
the first one kind of showed the big picture, and then this one's the most likely avenue if the city were to add. And does the city own the land? That's my last question, I promise.
We own 2/3 of it, and then Ed Eckley owns the other
Okay.
third, and he is very excited about this.
Okay,
Like
good. Thank you.
he's all in. So he's like, that'd be great.
And the we
This
is
was what I've been
both,
waiting around for.
the we is of the 2/3 is mostly the city and somewhat the EDIC. But
Right. Yeah. So.
all right, well, I would like to call a roll call vote relative to the motion made. So,
Tom,
I'm sorry.
I have some questions.
Yeah,
and
please.
I may have missed it. Who executed the not who as in vendor executed the 2010 study, but who authorized it or initiated it? And I'm going to apologize for my dog. He's really hungry. But who authorized or approved the 2010 study?
I can get it to, but I'm 95% sure it was the EDIC.
That was Alan Hagstrom, I think, was the chair at the time. And I think Alan was leading most of those charges. There were several, as Taylor said, there were several kind of studies that happened almost concurrently. And there was some additional looking at Blackburn and a few other places too, but I want to say it was all EDIC led. So
That sounds right.
My next question is, who would be authorizing the execution of this plan?
So we are authorizing the feasibility study, correct? And the outcome of this is, that we would have hopefully a good sense with numbers as to whether it made sense to pursue the development or not. And if that was the case, then we, with the city, would need to develop a project plan that then should be approved by city council, that would then initiate, they're not even the expenditure of money, but initiate the pursuit of the project development.
And the reason I bring up this point is just because of our recent debacle on zoning changes in the city. I know for a fact that committee worked for years researching the zoning committees and providing alternatives to our citizens. And when it came time to execute their research and their advice, the city, for the majority, decided to reject everything.
Right. No, it's certainly a cautionary tale. And obviously, there are zoning issues involved that need to be looked at here. And there, for every person that's supportive of economic development and jobs, there's somebody else who likes it just the way it is. And so there's no doubt that, I wouldn't necessarily say this could be controversial, but it will take, all the city's resources and willpower and education to build support for this.
I mean, our mission as the EDIC, the decision today to move forward and authorizing this study is kind of in line, not kind of in line, it's very much in line with our mission, right? Which is to, steward the resources that we have and, be creative around expansion in a thoughtful manner and build job base, right?
Other
Definitely cautionary tale, Patty, for sure.
The other thing I'm concerned about, I'm fiscally conservative, is approving an expenditure before the money is actually in our bank account. So I'm wondering which budget you're referring to. Are you referring to the state's 2022 or the state's 2023? A lot of that, I'm just concerned about approving an expenditure where the money has truly not been funded.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been
that was
told-
kind of my contingency ask, in the discussion. So maybe we would restate the motion, to address, Patty, are if we had that contingency that we discussed a few minutes ago in the motion, would that satisfy your concern about not having the money yet?
Yes, it would. For me to vote moving forward, I think the money has to be in the account.
So
I'm not comfortable voting for something because I'm not comfortable with the thought that some of our limited fiscal resources that we already have could be devoted to this before knowing potentially other expenses, which, for instance, the presentation we just listened to.
Yeah. So just to clarify, so, we just talked about money in the bank versus, confirmation from Senator Tarr that this money, this is not a sort of an appropriation that may or may not happen. It's in the budget, it's been approved. I just want to make sure that what I'm hearing is that you're not comfortable unless the money is in the bank versus, acknowledgement from Senator Tarr's office that this is a done deal.
I'm not comfortable committing to an expenditure that is not funded. In reality, my background is, unless it's in writing, it means nothing.
Well, it is in
Fine.
writing. It's just not in the bank account.
All right.
So
I'll check it out. We'll make sure, we won't move forward till that money's in the bank.
But I had, that kind of raised the corollary that I mentioned, which is if we didn't have the 40,000 from the state, would that make a difference on the vote today? Or the vote, whether it's today or whenever. Again, I mean, right now, I think we feel like, I believe that we're getting, an incentive, right? We're getting state assistance, another partner that's going to be important now and important further down the road, right? This is so I'm comfortable, I'm very comfortable that our share of that sounds like it's well leveraged, and we're going to get a tremendous value from it, and it's very much in line with the goals of the EDIC. My point was just around building a contingency in the motion to recognize that money is not in the bank yet, but our Weston and Sampson has indicated that they can speed up or slow down depending on the funding. I guess if that funding never occurred, though, that's a scenario, Patty, I think that you're concerned about, is when the 15K that we contribute runs out, then what happens?
I've seen that occur on state-funded programs.
So
Yeah, I'll verify that.
Yeah, so what I'm struggling with a little bit is just the language. Obviously, we can refine the motion, but whether it's the receipt of the monies, or whether it's the that the acknowledgement that the monies have been processed or on the way. So I'm fine either way. I just want to get it right.
Maybe we're complicating this in order to get the vote today. Patty seems like she's not comfortable with. Well, I'll let Patty speak for Patty, but
yeah.
I'm comfortable with the expenditure if I am 100% positive the money is there.
if Patty were to, Tom, with the current language, if Patty were to go with at her comfort level and vote, do we need a unanimous vote here to pass this?
No, we need a majority vote. But I want to respect, I mean, I'm just, as I said, the question is, in my mind, is it the receipt? Have we received this money versus, we have confirmed that the money, will be allocated in a timely way. I mean,
we could also
sit on the contract for 30 days and.
Does it, the other concern is, does the language in the state budget recognize that this money goes directly to this committee? Or is it a broader term that's used?
No, it's to this committee for this project.
Yeah, it's very specific.
So let me revise the motion. So the same motion to approve the proposal from Weston and Sampson to conduct this feasibility analysis of Conlin Road, Cape Ann Industrial Park, pending confirmation of the monies allocated by the state. Is that okay? Or do you want receipt?
Okay with me.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think any of us, and I don't think any of us are going to be comfortable if we feel like, this isn't absolutely going to happen. So.
But are you committing to agree to a contract?
We haven't signed it.
We haven't signed it, and my inclination is I won't sign it until Taylor has had a conversation with Senator Tarr's office, and we feel 100% certain that this money will be received and received in a timely manner. It's not going to be in December of 2023.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yep.
All right, Lee, do you have that motion? Okay, so roll call vote for, or did somebody second the motion with the revision? Taylor.
I will.
And Taylor, your vote?
Yeah.
Yes. Mike,
Yes.
Aye.
Patty?
Nay.
Okay. Gretel?
Aye.
Aye. I vote yay. So the yays have it. And so we'll get confirmation and get that information to you, certainly Patty and the rest of the board, ASAP. And as soon as we feel that we're confident in that, we'll sign the contract and send that to you guys. Thank you, Corey and Jeff and Kent, for your presentation and the discussion here today. And we look forward to hopefully working with you in 2023.
Likewise, and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks,
great
Corey.
holiday.
Jeffrey, Kent.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. I think those are good discussions and meaningful projects. So I'm happy that we took the time to fully vet them. I just realized I don't have the full agenda here. Let's just sort of run through quickly what remains on the agenda.
I have one in case you. Next up is signage, Tom.
Yep. Do you want to? I know I was going to take a picture of the sign, the big signs up there. I forgot to.
I have one. Yeah, I should have sent that out. Anyway, if you haven't been up to Blackburn, the signs are up. Jay got the signs painted before the weather turned south, and then there's just been a little pause because I changed the size of the signs on the first one because I want to allow for more expansion. The way it was filled up, and then Standard Electric had pulled out, so then there was one space left, and I just didn't think that was a good place to be, just to have one possible space left. So we made the signs about a half an inch smaller so we can fit a second row. So I think that before there was 17, now we can, or no, there was 14, we can do 16 little nameplates. So that's important there. And then there was because Seaside Graphics is doing it, there was that grant program going around about updating signage in downtown. They're focused on getting all that pushed out before the end of the year because it all has to be in place and paid for the grant money to be released. So they really just aren't doing anything except that grant signage stuff. So they're gonna now with everything, it's kind of all in their hands, and they're gonna start on that, first of the year once that other stuff, the grant stuff's done, and then we should be in good shape. So, barring weather and stuff, but their part of it's not really as weather dependent. So the concrete work and the painting and stuff was very weather dependent. The rest of it's all just screwing stuff onto those existing signs.
Administrative sort of question. So obviously folks are paying for signage. Is that going to be Lee's responsibility to essentially send out invoices?
I sent out invoices and I've received about half of them back. And then some people I followed up with them, they hadn't seen the first one. So yeah, I'll follow up again and make sure all that money's there. Most of it's, and there's probably enough in to pay for everything right now. And then the rest of it would be to pay the second part, to pay Seaside Graphics. And then the rest of it's going to be an account for maintenance and whatnot. So we'll be in charge of that.
Great.
Yep.
Thanks, Taylor, and thanks, Jay, for making that happen.
Yeah,
really
well,
thank-
long road, guys.
Thank you to the
Get a sign up
EDIC.
with your names on it.
Our names are on the back.
Taylor, you did a great job.
It's all you.
You continue to push it uphill, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, what's next on the agenda, Taylor?
CADA on demand report and
Yeah.
sponsorship. That'd be Mike.
Yeah, Cato on demand. I've had no contact with CADA. I think our participation in that just seems like it's not either not of interest. My general sense in the multiple meetings that I had with multiple potential sponsors, including, previous sponsors for year one, was kind of like it's up and running. We were investing in the pilot, and it's a bona fide program now. So I think there's just never really got much traction despite follow-ups, and CADA sounds like I've not had any further contact with CADA in the last few months. So to follow up on anything with regards
So
to
are you, Mike, or are we as a board sort of comfortable with just saying, it was great, we played an important role in kickstarting this and getting it going, but at this point, I think it is sort of a success in terms of usage, but corporate sponsorship, funding it is certainly going to be an issue at this point. But given our lack of communication, I think we just sort of let them run it, and if they come back to us, we'd certainly be willing to help. But
yeah, happy to help. I think with the staff changes, and as well as I think, really, I think we had some interesting conversations, including with previous sponsors, and there's just there was just no follow-up. No, usually in these kinds of conversations, there's some level of engagement, and it's not just pushing rope, right? So I can respect that, but it just seems like we weren't getting the kind of feedback that that we were going to get any green lights, or even responding to requests to follow up, even. So I mean, frankly, I haven't received any no's from all the meetings that I had and all the emails that we sent, but we certainly haven't had any other signs of life that there's interest in pursuing. So
that statement gives every indication that you're a positive thinking sales guy. I didn't receive any no's.
Yeah, I mean, no's are okay, right? It lets us focus where the value is there, and it's mutually valued, right? I don't think that there's ever any dissatisfaction with the program, dissatisfaction with the momentum, with the kind of progress. So I there was never any lack of enthusiasm, perhaps just lack of funds coming into the program. So,
okay, Taylor, next.
Sorry. Municipal harbor plan, and then ARPA. So I think that's you and you, right?
Yeah. So municipal harbor plan. So I just got in the last couple of days the we've had a lot of committee meetings over the last couple of years. And so I have the draft economic development strategies and sort of goals. And this is for our review before it's submitted to the state. I'm hoping that I could share it with you because, I think we should have some conversations in the next 6 months about what could be the role for the EDIC as it relates to the municipal harbor plan. So I'll find out if that's something I can share, or as soon as I can share it. But then I think that gives us a structured outline to really have a much more positive or constructive conversation, rather than me just sort of talking in concepts. And on the ARPA, I honestly don't know the administration of that. We have my wife and dog are just coming in the house here. We have received notice that we've got $40,000 for the energy capacity work ahead of us. But I haven't really received any specific notice. The only thing I have learned, and I did share this with Daymark today with Tom, is that because we're getting these monies through the city, that we will be responsible for complying with the city's procurement laws, which means we will have to develop RFPs, and get and submit those for any future work. So if we proceed with Daymark at this point, and we are allowed as the EDIC for legal services or engineering services specific to a project, we're allowed to sort of sole source. We would be using our monies and with any contribution from consortium members to fund that initial preliminary stage. If we were to do work in the future, then conceivably we would obviously submit, do RFPs and get responses, and then use the monies for that particular firm. So that's my report on ARPA and Municipal Harbor Plan. Taylor, next, anything? Oh,
That was ARPA. So now we're at status of accounts. That's me. So we have $652,000 in our bank account right now. Our annual, kind of our fixed annual expenses with legal and accounting and salaries and other, random little things is about $15,000 and $16,000. Last year we spent about $36,000, which was 15 of that was business development expense, which would have been funding of one of the things we did. Was it whether the blue economy? That's how they have it listed. Had to be one of the two things we donated to, and then there was 5,000 for the first mile program, which should have been the last mile program, but that's all right. So we're really, when you were asking about fixed expenses that we're up against, it's about, we'll call it $16,000 a year. So the rest of our money is, to be spent on things to push our agenda forward, really. So that's just for us to decide and banter back and forth about. And money coming in, we get a little money, from CDs and stuff that mature. And that was the other thing. I put that money into that diamond savings account because the CD rates weren't all that great, but I'm hoping they go up a little bit, and then we'll move that over. We can move that over whenever, but it seemed like the rates were going to keep going up a little bit. But there was about $165,000 that I put into a diamond savings account, and then I wanted to see what expenses we might have, whether it was Daymark or Weston Sampson, and keep us a little liquid this year, and then put the rest of it into some type of long-term savings, or a CD or something like that. But yeah, no, they're pretty basic finances.
Yep. But I did want, everybody on the board to understand, as we look at potentially spending, $15,000 of our money on the feasibility study, or 12,000, or now 15,000 on the Daymark, is how that fit into, our larger sort of annual budget. I certainly don't really anticipate any other expenses other than the signage expenses, and that should be a break even with a little bit of money for future maintenance issues.
Yeah.
So that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
An
Shouldn't cost us anything.
So,
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
any other issues before dogs and cats take over our lives?
What, do you hear mine?
Only one,
No, but I had a
Oh.
close call with my cat. I don't know if any of you saw that. She's terrified.
only one update. The mayor's holiday gathering on the 22nd is from 4 to 6:30. The 5:30, it's from 4 to 5:30, I think, is the Jambalaya band. So bring your dancing shoes.
The mayor will be performing in the band as well. Do we know?
I don't know. Don't know. This is a
We'll find
report.
out.
Any other news or comments or questions? Well, I make a motion to close out, adjourn this meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Hopefully we'll maybe see you Thursday. If not, everybody have a great holiday and a good restful time of the year. So thanks for everything tonight, and we will see you all soon.
Yeah, best wishes.
Thanks.
best
Thank
wishes
you.
to
Happy
everyone.
holidays,
See you.
everyone.
You
Happy
too.
holidays.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.